Admiral Vex then pressed his scaled fingers against the command console, watching the sector boundary approach on the main display. 3,000 years. 3,000 years since any vessel had crossed into Sector 7 Alpha and returned to tell the tale. The Cathari Confederation had marked it forbidden for good reason. Ships didn't just disappear here. They vanished completely, as if they'd never existed at all. Approaching the boundary line, reported Navigation Officer Zilrin, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. The bridge crew of the battlecruiser Eternal Dominance moved with nervous efficiency, their reptilian features betraying the anxiety they all felt. Vex then straightened his massive frame, letting his presence fill the bridge. As the most decorated admiral in the Confederation fleet, he'd seen combat across 12 sectors and survived encounters with 3 different hostile species. But this felt different. The empty space ahead seemed to pulse with invisible menace. "Sir," called out sensor operator Kethmar from a station, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings. They're rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. A heartbeat in space?" Vexthan's yellow eyes narrowed. "Show me." The main display shifted to show energy patterns dancing across the void. Waves of unknown radiation pulsed outward from somewhere deep within the sector, steady and organic. It was unlike anything in their databases. "Fleet Command was right to send us," Vexthan muttered. The Confederation had finally decided that the potential resources in the Forbidden Sector outweighed the risks. They'd assembled their most advanced exploration fleet. 20 ships, each equipped with experimental shielding and weapon systems. If anyone could survive whatever lay beyond that boundary, it would be them. "Cross the line," he commanded. The moment they passed the invisible barrier, everything changed. The usual background hum of space went silent. Their communications with the outer fleet crackled with static before cutting out entirely. Even more disturbing, their instruments began detecting structures that shouldn't exist. "Admiral." Zilrin's voice had dropped to a whisper. "Long-range sensors are picking up artificial constructs. They're everywhere." Vex then leaned forward as the display updated. Scattered throughout the sector were objects that defied explanation, massive geometric shapes that seemed to bend light around them, creating impossible shadows in the vacuum. Some were clearly mechanical, while others appeared organic, like enormous creatures frozen in space. "How many?" he asked. "Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. And they're all pointed in the same direction." "Toward what?" Zilrin's hands trembled as she worked her controls. "A star system. 3 planets in a habitable zone, but only one showing signs of life. It's a blue world, sir, with oceans." Vexthan felt his blood chill. A living world in the Forbidden Sector meant one of 2 things. Either they discovered the greatest prize in galactic history, or they just walked into the most elaborate trap ever conceived. "Take us closer." Battle stations. As they moved deeper into the sector, the scale of what they were seeing became clear. The mysterious objects weren't random debris. They were arranged in patterns, forming vast offensive networks that stretched across light years. Each formation was positioned to protect the inner system, layer upon layer of protection that spoke of paranoia, preparation, and unimaginable resources. "Sir," Kethmar called out, his voice cracking, "the energy readings are getting stronger. And there's something else. I'm detecting active power sources. These constructs, they're not abandoned. They're online and operational. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show no advanced civilizations in this region. With respect, Admiral, our intelligence hasn't covered this sector for 3 millennia." Before Vexthan could respond, their communication system suddenly burst to life with a signal unlike anything they'd ever heard. It was organic, musical, but with an underlying structure that suggested high technology. The sound filled the bridge, and every member of the crew felt something primal stir in their minds, recognition mixed with terror. "Translation matrix is working," reported Communications Officer Hector. It's a greeting, in perfect Cathari. "But, sir, the linguistic algorithm suggests this language pattern is far older than our current dialect. Whoever's speaking learned our language when it was still ancient." The signal cleared, and a voice emerged, calm, measured, and deeply unsettling in its familiarity with their language. Welcome to our territory, Cathari Confederation vessel, Eternal Dominance. We have been monitoring your approach for some time. I am Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Network. Please maintain your current heading and prepare to be escorted to Earth. We have much to discuss. Vexthan's world tilted. Humans. The Forbidden Sector was controlled by humans, a species that, according to galactic records, should be nothing more than primitive cave dwellers on a backward world light years away from here. Sir, Zilrin's voice seemed to come from very far away. Plot a course for the blue planet, Vex then said quietly, and prepare the fleet for anything. We're not just entering forbidden space anymore. We're walking into a mystery that's 3,000 years in the making. As the Eternal Dominance moved toward the inner system, massive shapes began emerging from the darkness around them. Ships of impossible design that moved like living creatures through space. The humans hadn't just been waiting. They'd been preparing for war. Commander Sarachin stood in the observation deck of Terra Station, watching the Cathari fleet approach through the outer perimeter. Her reflection in the reinforced glass showed a woman in her 40s, with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that had seen too much. Behind her, the massive command center buzzed with activity as hundreds of technicians monitored the approaching vessels. 15 more ships just crossed the boundary, reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb from his station. That makes 20 total, just as the projections predicted. Sarah nodded without turning from the window. The Terran Defense Network had been tracking this fleet since it left Cathari space 6 months ago. Their deep space monitoring stations, hidden throughout the galaxy, had observed every course correction, every supply stop, every private communication between the fleet commanders. The Confederation thought they were exploring uncharted territory, but they were actually following a path humanity had carefully prepared for them. Activate the museum pieces, Sarah ordered. Let them see what they expect to see. Throughout the system, ancient-looking space installations began powering up. Relics that appeared to be thousands of years old, but had actually been constructed last week using deliberately primitive technology. To the Cathari sensors, they would register as mysterious artifacts from a lost civilization. In reality, they were elaborate stage props designed to reinforce humanity's carefully crafted legend. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the project's chief psychologist, joined Sarah at the observation window. Her expertise in xenopsychology had been crucial in predicting how the Cathari would react to each phase of their deception. The psychological profile suggests Admiral Vex and will be cautious but curious, Hayes said. He's aggressive enough to push forward, but smart enough to recognize a trap. That makes him perfect for our purposes. And the rest of his species? Arrogant, territorial, but with a deep-seated fear of the unknown. They've spent centuries conquering weaker civilizations, so they've never had to consider what might be stronger than them. That blind spot is exactly what we need. Sarah finally turned from the window. Behind her, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, its surface dotted with continents that showed clear signs of advanced civilization. But what the Cathari couldn't see from their current position were the massive industrial complexes hidden on the dark side of the planet, or the weapon platforms concealed within the asteroid belt, or the fact that humanity's true population wasn't a few billion the aliens expected, but over 200 billion souls spread across 17 different star systems. Incoming transmission from the flagship, Webb announced. Put it through. Admiral Vex then's reptilian features appeared on the main screen. His yellow eyes darted around the command center, clearly trying to assess human technology and capabilities. Sarah had to admire his composure. He was obviously terrified, but maintaining perfect military bearing. "Commander Chun," he said, his translation software rendering his words in perfect English. "I must admit, your species was not what we expected to find in this sector." "And what did you expect, Admiral?" "Ancient ruins, dead civilizations, perhaps some automated defense systems left behind by an extinct race." He paused, studying her face. "Not a thriving world inhabited by humans." Sarah smiled, and she could see the slight flinch in Vex then's expression. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy as a minor species, barely evolved beyond their primitive origins. That reputation had been very carefully cultivated. "We've been waiting for you, Admiral. Your species has quite a reputation in this part of the galaxy." "You know the Confederation?" We know of many things. Please, continue your approach to Earth. There are things we need to show you, things that will change how you see the universe." After the transmission ended, Hayes looked at Sarah with concern. "You're enjoying this too much." 300 years, Sarah replied. 300 years since the Cathari glass colony at New Geneva. 16 million souls turned to ash because they thought humans were weak. You're damn right I'm enjoying this. The truth was more complex than simple revenge, though Sarah would never admit it. Humanity had spent centuries playing the role of a backward species, allowing themselves to be overlooked and underestimated while they secretly expanded throughout the galaxy. They watched civilizations rise and fall, had learned the patterns of galactic politics, and had prepared for the day when the major powers would finally notice them. That day was today. "Contact the lunar defense grid," Sarah ordered. "I want a full demonstration prepared. Something that will show our guests the difference between what they think they know about humans and what humans actually are." As the Cathari fleet moved deeper into the solar system, they began encountering the first of humanity's ancient artifacts. Space stations that appear to be thousands of years old, covered in mysterious symbols that were actually just decorative elements designed by the art department. Each station broadcast signals in languages that seemed alien but were actually variants of human tongues, modified to sound exotic to alien ears. The effect was exactly what they planned. The Cathari were seeing evidence of an ancient, advanced human civilization that had somehow been hiding in plain sight for millennia. Their confusion was turning to fear, and their fear was making them predictable. Admiral Vex is requesting permission to send boarding parties to examine the artifacts, Webb reported. "Granted, but make sure they only see what we want them to see." Sarah turned back to the window as the first Cathari shuttles launched toward the fake ruins. Phase 1 of humanity's revelation was complete. The aliens believed they discovered evidence of an ancient human empire. Soon, they would learn that the empire wasn't ancient at all. It was very, very current, and it had been waiting for them to arrive. Admiral Vex then materialized on a transport pad of what appeared to be an ancient human space station, his personal guard flanking him with weapons ready. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than standard, and the air carried strange scents that seemed both organic and mechanical. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across corridors that appeared to be carved from a single piece of unknown metal. "Readings are off the chart, sir," reported Sergeant Kolvek, scanning the walls with his equipment. "The metal composition doesn't match any known alloys, and there are energy patterns running through the entire structure like a nervous system." Vexton nodded, though he was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. Everything about this station spoke of technology far beyond what humans should possess. The architectural style was clearly organic, flowing like water frozen in time. Yet the engineering principles behind it were sophisticated enough to make his own ship's designers weep with envy. "Sir," called Corporal Zekrin from ahead, "you need to see this." They'd entered what appeared to be a central chamber, its walls covered with displays showing star charts, technical specifications, and most disturbing of all, detailed intelligence reports on dozens of galactic civilizations, including the Cathari Confederation. As Vexen approached the central console, the displays automatically adjusted to show information in perfect Cathari script. "How long have they been watching us?" he whispered. The question was answered by a soft voice behind them. "Long enough to know that your third fleet has a weakness in its left formation, that your home world's orbital defenses have a 16-second gap in their scanning cycle, and that you personally have nightmares about the Battle of Kepler Station." Vexen spun around to find Commander Chin standing in the doorway, apparently having materialized from thin air. His guards raised their weapons, but she simply smiled and held up her hands in a gesture of peace. "How did you get here?" Kolvek demanded. "The same way we get everywhere, Sergeant. We plan ahead." She gestured to the walls around them. "This station has been monitoring galactic communications for over 2 centuries. We know about your wars, your politics, your trade routes, your military capabilities. We know which species are expanding, which are declining, and which are about to make very bad decisions." Vexen lowered his sidearm slowly. "The Confederation has detailed intelligence on human civilization. You're supposed to be a primitive species barely capable of interplanetary flight. That intelligence is quite accurate, Admiral. It describes exactly what we wanted you to see. Chen moved to the central console, her fingers dancing over controls that responded to her touch with an efficiency that spoke of long familiarity. Would you like to see the real human civilization? Before he could answer, the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the view outside the station. What Vex then saw made his blood turn to ice. Earth wasn't the simple blue world they'd observed from a distance. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital installations that dwarfed anything in Cathari space. Industrial complexes the size of continents floated in perfect formation, their surfaces bristling with technologies he couldn't even begin to identify. Streams of traffic moved between the installations, not the simple cargo haulers he expected, but vessels that moved with the fluid grace of living creatures. 217 billion humans, Chen said conversationally, spread across 17 star systems, with populations hidden in plain sight throughout the galaxy. We've been your neighbors for centuries, Admiral. We've walked among you, traded with you, even fought beside some of your species against common enemies. And you never knew. Impossible, Vexen breathed. Is it? How many times has your intelligence network encountered humans in supposedly uninhabited systems? How many times have your exploration teams found evidence of advanced technology in regions that should be empty? How many unexplained phenomena have you attributed to ancient alien artifacts when the truth was much simpler? The displays around them shifted to show historical records. Cathari exploration, reports going back centuries, each one documenting encounters with mysterious technologies or unexplained phenomena. As Chen highlighted specific details, patterns began to emerge. Every single report described technology that was now clearly recognizable as human in origin. We've been testing you, she continued. Every major galactic power has been tested the same way. We needed to understand who you were, what you wanted, how you'd react when faced with something beyond your understanding. Most species fail those tests. What happened to them? Chen's expression grew cold. They made the mistake of attacking human colonies before we were ready to reveal ourselves. The hegemony of Essekitar, the Trilaxian Empire, the Void Priests of Arcturus, all extinct now, though the galaxy believed they were destroyed by mysterious forces or ancient guardian systems. Vexen felt his legs giving out. He sank into a nearby chair, his mind reeling with the implications. You've been manipulating galactic politics for centuries. Not manipulating, observing, learning, preparing. Chen leaned against the console, her casual posture a sharp contrast to the weight of her words. The galaxy is full of species like yours, Admiral, aggressive, expansionist, certain of your own superiority. Most civilizations follow the same pattern. They expand until they encounter something stronger, then they either adapt or die. And humans learn to hide, to watch, to wait. The displays shifted again, showing massive fleets of human vessels moving through deep space, hidden from galactic sensors by technology that bent light and warped space itself. While you were busy conquering weaker species, we were studying stronger ones. While you were fighting over territory, we were learning to reshape matter at the quantum level. While you were building empires, we were becoming something beyond empire. Vexen looked up at her, his yellow eyes wide with fear. What do you want from us? That depends entirely on what you do next, Admiral. The Cathari Confederation can continue as it has, believing itself to be a major galactic power, while remaining completely ignorant of the true nature of the universe. Or it can join the handful of species that have proven themselves worthy of knowing the truth. What truth? Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That humanity isn't the only species playing this game. We're just the only one you discovered so far. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of alien technology and the sound of Vexthan's labored breathing. The command bridge of the Eternal Dominance had become a tomb of silence. Admiral Vexthan sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the true scope of human presence in the system. What had initially appeared to be 20 or 30 installations was revealed to be over 3,000 active platforms, each one broadcasting energy signatures that dwarf his entire fleet's combined output. Sir, Navigation Officer Zilrin said quietly. We're receiving detailed escort instructions from Earth Control. They want us to follow a specific approach vector to the planet's surface. Vexton nodded absently. Since his return from the ancient station, he'd been struggling to process everything Commander Chen had shown him. The historical records alone were devastating. Centuries of human observation, intervention, and manipulation that had shaped galactic politics without anyone knowing. But it was a final revelation that haunted him. Humanity's claim that they weren't the only hidden power in the galaxy. Admiral. Communications Officer Hector interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command. The message was brief and terrifying. 2 more Confederation fleets had been dispatched to support their mission, but both had vanished without trace while en route to Forbidden Sector. More disturbing still, similar disappearances were being reported by the Trilaxian Alliance, the Vegan Cooperative, and the Centauri Republic. Someone or something was systematically removing military assets from across the galaxy. How many ships total? Vexton asked. Over 400 vessels from 12 different species, sir. All disappeared within the last 72 hours. Before Vexton could respond, their communication system activated on its own, displaying Commander Chen's face on the main screen. Behind her, the Earth Command Center showed a level of activity that suggested crisis management on a galactic scale. Admiral, she said without preamble, we need to expedite your arrival. The situation has become more complicated than we initially anticipated. What situation? Chen hesitated for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. The Shepherds have noticed your activities. They're moving to contain what they perceive as a breach in galactic security. The Shepherds? An ancient species that has been managing galactic development for millions of years. They prefer to remain invisible, guiding younger civilizations through careful manipulation rather than direct contact. Your unauthorized entry into our territory has been interpreted as a potential threat to their long-term plans. Vexen felt ice forming in his veins. Are you telling me there's a species that considers both humans and Cathari to be pets? Not pets. Projects. The Shepherds view galactic civilization as a carefully balanced ecosystem. They allow wars and expansion to a certain degree because conflict drives innovation and prevents stagnation. But they intervene when any single species becomes too powerful or when hidden civilizations like ours risk exposure. The tactical display updated to show new contacts throughout the system. Massive vessels that seem to phase in and out of normal space. Their designs unlike anything in any known database. They move with perfect coordination, surrounding both the human installations and the Kethari fleet with mathematical precision. Sir, Sensor Operator Kethmar reported, his voice barely controlled. The new contacts are generating gravitational distortions. They're not just moving through space, they're reshaping it. Chen's expression grew grim. The Shepherds have decided that this situation requires direct intervention. They're preparing to remove all evidence of human advancement and reset galactic civilization to what they consider appropriate levels. Your fleet will be destroyed, your people's memory of this encounter will be erased, and Earth will be rendered uninhabitable as a precautionary measure. How many people? Vexen asked, though he dreaded the answer. 17 star systems. Over 200 billion souls. Unless we can convince them that both our species deserve to survive, they'll implement what they call a corrective measure. It's happened before. The Andromedans. The crystal cities of Vega, the First Republic of Sol, all erased from history when they became inconvenient to the Shepherds' plans. Vexen stood slowly, his military training finally overriding his shock. What do you need from us? Your fleet represents the first time in over 1,000 years that multiple species have discovered hidden human assets without being immediately destroyed. The Shepherds are curious about this development, which gives us a narrow window of opportunity. If we can demonstrate that cooperation between our species offers more value than isolation, they might allow us to continue existing. And if we fail? Chen's smile held no humor. Then neither of our civilizations will exist in 72 hours. The Shepherds don't believe in partial solutions. The tactical display showed the alien vessels completing their encirclement. Each ship was easily 10 times the size of Vexen's flagship, and their energy output suggested weapons that could crack planets. More disturbing still, their formations were clearly designed not just to contain the human installations, but to prevent any possible escape from the entire star system. There's something else, Chen added. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected similar Shepherd deployments around the home worlds of every major galactic power. This isn't just about Earth or the Cathari Confederation. They're implementing a galaxy-wide reset. Vexen sank back into a command chair as the full scope of the situation became clear. Humanity's revelation had triggered something far beyond a simple first contact scenario. The hidden powers that had been shaping galactic civilization for millions of years were now moving openly, and every species in the galaxy had just become pawns in a game they didn't understand. "How long do we have?" he asked. 71 hours and 37 minutes, Chen replied. "And Admiral, whatever we're going to do, we need to do it together. The Shepherds are about to teach the entire galaxy what it means to be truly powerless." The combined human Cathari fleet hung motionless in space, completely surrounded by Shepherd vessels that defied every known law of physics. Admiral Vex then stood on the bridge of his flagship alongside Commander Chen, watching as the ancient ships prepared for what could only be described as a systematic erasure of galactic civilization. "Final count shows 2,000 Shepherd vessels in this system alone," reported Lieutenant Webb from his monitoring station. "Our deep space arrays are detecting similar deployments around every major population center in the galaxy. They're not just targeting military assets anymore. They're positioning to sterilize entire worlds." Chen nodded grimly. Over the past 60 hours, she and Vexen had worked together to coordinate their combined forces, sharing technologies and tactical information in ways that would have been unthinkable days earlier. The revelation that both their species were considered expendable by an ancient galactic management system had created bonds forged in desperation. "Any response to our communication attempts?" Vexen asked. "Nothing direct," Chen replied, "but their formation patterns suggest they're waiting for something. Our xenopsychology teams believe they're conducting some form of evaluation, testing whether our species can adapt quickly enough to warrant continued existence." Through the viewports, the Shepherd vessels were clearly visible now, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each ship was a masterwork of impossible engineering, with geometries that hurt to look at directly and energy fields that twisted space around them like sculptors working with reality itself. Contact from the Shepherd command ship, Hector announced suddenly. The main display activated, showing not the alien forms they'd expected, but something far more disturbing. A figure that appeared almost human, but with subtle differences that spoke of millions of years of guided evolution. Its voice, when it spoke, carried harmonics that resonated directly in their minds. "Greetings, children of the secondary development cycles. I am Curator Zephyr of the Shepherds. We have observed your recent interactions with considerable interest." Vexen stepped forward, drawing on decades of military diplomacy training. "Curator Zephyr, I am Admiral Vexen of the Cathari Confederation, and this is Commander Chen of the Terran Defense Network. We understand that our actions have caused concern, but we wish to discuss." "Discussion implies equality of position," Zephyr interrupted. "You are a product of our guidance, Admiral. Every aspect of your civilization's development has been carefully managed to serve specific purposes within the greater galactic ecosystem. The recent revelation of human capabilities represents an unplanned variable that threatens systemic stability." Chen stepped up beside Vexen. "With respect, Curator, that's exactly why our cooperation should be seen as valuable rather than threatening. We've demonstrated the ability to share advanced technologies and coordinate military responses across species boundaries. That represents evolution, not instability." Zephyr's expression remained unchanged. Evolution within acceptable parameters is encouraged. Evolution that disrupts carefully maintained balances requires correction. The display shifted to show images of the galaxy-wide Shepherd deployment. "We have initiated comprehensive reset protocols for all civilizations currently exceeding optimal development thresholds." "How many species?" Vexen asked, dreading the answer. 47 civilizations will be reduced to pre-industrial levels. 16 will be relocated to preserve genetic diversity. 7 will be rendered extinct as they have become irredeemably aggressive. Humanity and the Cathari Confederation fall into the final category. The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. The shepherds weren't just managing galactic civilization. They were preparing to commit genocide on an unimaginable scale, all in service of some ancient plan that treated entire species as expendable resources. There must be an alternative, Jin said. We've proven we can work together, share knowledge, coordinate our efforts. Doesn't that demonstrate exactly the kind of development you should want to encourage? Zephyr tilted its head slightly, the first sign of anything resembling curiosity. You believe cooperation between your species represents advancement rather than threat? We know it does, Vexen interjected. In the past 3 days, we've shared technologies that have advanced both our civilizations by decades. We've coordinated military strategies that neither of us could have developed alone. We've begun to see the galaxy not as territory to be conquered, but as a community to be protected. Interesting. Zephyr's image flickered, and suddenly the display showed scenes from throughout the galaxy. Human and Cathari forces working together, sharing resources, protecting civilian populations from other shepherd fleets. Our monitoring systems have indeed detected unprecedented cooperation between your species. This was not anticipated in our projections. Chin seized the opening. Because your projections were based on how we behaved in isolation. You never considered what might happen if we were forced to work together toward a common goal. The common goal being survival, Zephyr observed. The common goal being growth, Vex then corrected. Survival is just the beginning. What we discovered is that both our species are stronger when we combine our capabilities. Humans bring technologies we never imagined, while Cathari provide organizational structures that multiply human effectiveness. Together, we're becoming something neither of us could achieve alone. For long moments, Zephyr remained silent, and Vex then could feel the weight of billions of lives hanging in the balance. Finally, the curator spoke again. You propose that your cooperation represents a new form of guided evolution, one that transcends individual species limitations through voluntary integration. We propose that evolution doesn't stop just because you've been guiding it, Chin said firmly. Maybe it's time to see what happens when you let it grow naturally. Zephyr's image smiled for the first time, and the expression was both alien and strangely familiar. Very well. The shepherds will implement a modified protocol. Your cooperation will be considered a controlled experiment in trans-species development. You will be allowed to continue, but under observation. Other civilizations will be given the opportunity to demonstrate similar adaptive capabilities. The shepherd vessels began withdrawing, their impossible forms fading back into the darkness between stars. As they departed, Zephyr's final words echoed across both ships. Do not disappoint us, children. The galaxy is watching to see what you become. As the ancient fleet vanished, Vex then and Chin found themselves alone in a universe that had suddenly become far more complicated and far more hopeful than either had imagined. The forbidden sector was no longer forbidden. It had become the birthplace of something entirely new, a galactic civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest, growth rather than domination. The real journey was just beginning. Chat controls Sonnet 4.